Okay, back to the phones. People have been patiently waiting. This is 18-year-old Rosser in Atlanta. Great to have you. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to speak to you again. I've been on once before.
You have been... Oh, great to have you back then.
Yes. Well, as you mentioned, I'm 18, and I wanted to make a quick comment, and I also had a very small question for you. But to start with my comment, for my entire life, and I'm sure longer than that, the left has totally insisted on identity politics. You know, politicizing skin color, sexuality, religion, whatever, the weather, whatever you want. And after a certain amount of time of that, I just really don't think it should come as any surprise to anyone that the groups regarded as the enemy, so to speak, i.e., you know, white guys, want their own pride movement, if you will. And that's just the result of victimhood-based self-segregation. And personally, I have, you know, no tolerance for identity politics or, you know, being the victim or whatever. But I do think that if there's any remaining legitimate white supremacist sentiment left in America, it has to be the left sustaining it and nourishing it. So I just want your thoughts on that and my question if you have time.
Well, let me ask you to clarify. When you say legitimate white supremacist sentiment, what exactly do you mean?
I mean people who, through time and being, you know, beaten up on, they say, okay, well, you know, if I'm the bad guy, then, you know, maybe white people are better or whatever. You know, I've never found that appealing in any way, but I can understand someone who's been,
well, you know, all this is rooted.
So long.
You know, we have gay pride, we have black pride, we have trans pride, we have all kinds of pride, but you're not allowed white pride, right?
Exactly.
We have women's studies, black studies, can't have white studies. Now, you know why this is.
Well, because the white people are the people creating these victim groups.
Yes, and they did so because they founded the country, and they were the original sinners,
right?
The original discriminators, the original unfair, the original bigots, racists, and all this stuff. And since they've never had to pay a price for it, they're not allowed pride or white studies because it has been proclaimed evil by virtue of the fact they have been the majority. And the majority in left-wing Democrat politics is always guilty and always evil. Now, hang on. Don't hang up. Get back to Rosser here in Atlanta. It's quite bright for an 18-year-old. I didn't mean to pigeonhole you there, but when you said legitimate white supremacy, I wanted to find out explicitly what you meant. Your question, I think, incorporates the answer. You asked me if I think that the white supremacy that's out there is literally, you can trace it to the left. I do. I said so in the first hour. I think here you have these guys that haven't done anything to anybody, and they're being blamed for victimizing all these people. Everybody. And look at how many victim groups there are now. And it's all to blame. All of it is to blame the hand of certain white males. Which, I can totally understand that ticking them off. Absolutely. It doesn't justify white supremacy. Doesn't justify any of that. But I just abhor all of this. I abhor identity politics because it separates.
I do as well.
There's no unity. There's no together. It's hopeless, in fact, with identity politics. It's literally hopeless, which I think illustrates the total fraud that is the left-wing agenda, as they stated.
Well, one thing that you have mentioned that I think correlates to this is if you think of victimhood as literally a currency that has social value, right? The more victim groups that get created, the more that value, that currency becomes inflated, essentially. And I think you see that all the time. That's kind of what I talked to you about last time. I think it was May of 2016. But the quick question I had, well, first, I wanted to ask, what you would recommend to young people to avoid getting kind of sucked up into this thing. And the second would be, basically, I have an iPhone 5 that's falling apart, and I would kill to have a phone signed by you. That would be so amazingly incredible.
5 Falling Apart, signed by me. And I'm not. Hang on. Oh, you're asking for a new phone, is that right?
I would kill for a phone signed by you, Rush.
Well, I don't require anybody do that. Okay, look, first things first. What I would advise young people, you have to understand now.
Yes, sir.
I'm 66, and I'm flattered you're asking. I fully understand that somebody 18 to 25 is going to look at what I think is outmoded, outdated, and tainted by an experience that they will not share, meaning my life and its experiences. But I think my answer to your question here is universal for everybody. How many of you, let me just ask a question, open it to everybody. How many of you take yourselves seriously? And I don't mean this in any way to relate to ego or that you're a serious person or a jokester or what, but how many of you are self-confident? How many of you think that your life has value to you and others, that you're not just a placeholder? I think this is crucial. I've known so many people who have, we're talking identity, who have identity problems, self-worth problems, who do not take themselves seriously because they don't believe they're ever going to amount to anything. And they cover for this by joking around and appearing to be unconcerned and lackadaisical and so forth, good personality, and fun guy. It's a serious thing to take your life seriously because we all only get one. And there isn't a do-over. Now, life itself features many do-overs after you fail, you screw up, you hopefully learn from it the next day, the next year, and so forth. But in your life in general, I think people who do not take themselves seriously, and you might find this contradictory, I think they become highly susceptible to the victim entreaties. It's so easy to be a victim. The first thing about being a victim is it's never your fault. Whatever is going wrong in your life, it isn't your fault. That is so liberating in terms of liking yourself. Failure and having problems doesn't breed self-love, and everybody needs self-love. You have to love yourself to one degree, and nobody else will if you don't. It doesn't mean you have an off-putting personality or you're arrogant or any of that. It just means that you take yourself serious. It doesn't mean you don't clown around now and then. It doesn't mean you don't joke around. But it means that you have an awareness of the value of your life because of its individuality, because there isn't another you no matter what you think. Every soul is unique and different. Even the souls of identical twins are different things. We're all unique, and as such, we all have individual promise and opportunity. And the moment that we decide to abandon that in exchange for victim status, we are essentially announcing that our lives are over. And we're turning them over to others who are committed or promised us to make things better. And they never do. Because they, be it the Democrat Party, be it a professor, they will never care as much about you as you care about yourself, or should. And since nobody will ever care for you or about you as much as you will, you should always invest in yourself first. Not a political party, not a political movement, but invest in yourself. And in the process of doing this, you can't possibly become a victim if you do all of this. It's something that people realize at different phases of their lives. I'm not saying at 18 you should have already come to the same conclusions here, Ross, that I have. You haven't lived long enough to. You have a body of experience yet. You sound like you're ahead of the game. Some people never get to the point that I'm talking about here till they're 50. Some people never get there at all. Some people have so little self-esteem that they just can't think of themselves as special in the unique sense. They just can't. So they don't take themselves seriously. So they don't think anybody else ever will. And it's also easy to do that. Then you have lesser expectations to meet, so forth. Victimhood, victimology, especially when it's manufactured, is just, it's a killer, if you ask me. It just silences the very essence of people. And it converts them into angry. It codifies the anger. It promotes the anger. It fuels the anger. It doesn't do anything good for anybody, and it isn't necessary. And the idea that there are so many victims in this country, it has to be manufactured. It just has to be. People will not naturally gravitate to it. People tend to be naturally pessimistic, but to convert the pessimism into a constant status of victimhood, that's something that has to be promoted and promulgated, and it happens in college classrooms. This guy Lilla writes about it in, I think, a great way. If I have time to share a couple more paragraphs. It says, liberal political education takes place on campuses that are far, far removed socially and geographically from the rest of the country, particularly from the sorts of people who once were the foundation of the Democrat Party. It's exactly true. Now, since the new iPhones are coming out in about a month, Rosser, I'm going to make an exception here. Since you plaintively begged while trying to suck up, I'm going to fall prey to it. Since the new phones are coming out anyway, and I've got a stock of 7. You tell Snerdley what you want, a 7 or a 7 Plus. Don't frown at me in there. I'm following my instincts on this. I know. That's right. That's right. You tell other callers, please don't bring it up. This is a one-time, one-off thing. I realize I'm setting a precedent, but I'm in charge of the precedent, so I can cancel it anytime I want. But if this phone will keep this guy off the protest march and out of victimhood, then it'll be worth it. You just ask him what kind he wants.